Um, Adhyatma Gyana Nityatvam Gyana Ganartha Darshanam Etaj Shnantam Iti Proktam Ajanam Yad Atonyata. Synonyms: Anmadimitvam, humility; Adambitvam, pridelessness; Ahimsa, nonviolence; Kshanti, tolerance; Arjavam, simplicity; Acharya Upashanam, approaching a bona fide spiritual master; Shocham, cleanliness; Stairam, steadfastness; Atma Vinigraha, self-control; Indriyarteshu, in the matter of the senses; Vairagyam, renunciation; Anahankara, being without false egoism; Eva, certainly; Cha, also; Janma, with birth; Mrityu, death; Jara, old age; Vyadi, and disease; Dukkha, of the distress; Dosha, the fault; Anudarshanam, observing; Shakti, being without attachment; Anabhivasanga, being without association; Putra, for son; Dara, wife; Griha Adishu, home, etc. Nityam, constant; Cha, also; Samachitatvam, equilibrium; Ishta, the desirable; Anishta, the undesirable; Apapatishu, having obtained; Mayi, unto me; Cha, also; Ananya Yogena, by unalloyed devotional service; Bhakti, devotion; Avipacharina, without any break; Vivikta, two solitary desha, places; Sivitam, aspiring; Arati, being without attachment; Janasam Sadi, to people in general; Adhyatma, pertaining to the self; Gyan, in knowledge; Nityatvam, constancy; Tattva Gyan, knowledge of the truth; Artha, for the object; Darshanam, philosophy; Etat, all this; Gyanam, knowledge; Iti, thus; Proktam, declared; Agyanam, ignorance; Yat, that which; Ata, from this; Anyata, other. Translation, go ahead.
Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity; approaching a bona fide spiritual master; cleanliness, steadiness, self-control; renunciation of the objects of sense gratification; absence of false ego; the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease; detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest; even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events; constant and unalloyed devotion to me; aspiring to live in a solitary place; detachment from the general mass of people; accepting the importance of self-realization. Here, I got a strange pop-up here, hold on. Okay. And philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and beside this, whatever there may be is ignorance.
You get those annoying pop-ups too?
Occasionally, yeah.
You know, they have these pop-up blockers. You know, it depends on your browser or what you're using, you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can control those, you know, if you go look in the settings. Purport: this process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. But actually, this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made of the 24 elements. And the process of knowledge as described here is the means to get out of it. All of the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point, is described in the first line of the 11th verse. Mayi chananya yogena bhaktir anya vicharini. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. But if one takes a devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within him. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12, Yasyati bhaktir bhagavati kinchana savargunas tatra samasate sara. All the good qualities of knowledge develop in those who have attained the stage of devotional service. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 8th verse, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, this is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this process of knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. So, yeah, the idea of accepting a spiritual master, the principle of accepting a spiritual master, very, very important. You should always be thinking about that in your devotional life if you're serious about making advancement, because that's the key. I just was reading something about devotional service. Devotional service, the idea of it, I've been in the movement for like 44 years, but I didn't even know what the hell devotional service was for like 30 of those years, because I was too involved in my own senses and my own selfish thing. You can't really understand. Even the Bhagavad-gītā says, resolute determination for devotional service does not take place if you are attached to your sense gratification. If you're agitated by the objects of sense gratification, if you're attached to those things, the resolute determination of devotional service doesn't take place, because your mind is going out all over the place. So I just read this, and it's really kind of interesting. It's kind of a principle that we should live our lives to. Can you see the screen here?
Yes.
Okay, this is something I took from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's actually from the Sharira, whatever you call it. It's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on the Bhagavad-gītā. I'm just reading that now. He's one of the great acharyas in our line from the 17th century or 18th century, 1700s. He was after Lord Chaitanya, but he was very, very, very intimately involved with the deepest meanings of Lord Chaitanya's purports, what he wanted to accomplish in this world as far as his mission. And so here he says, this is Lord Krishna speaking to Brahma, right? Or no, Brahma speaking to Narada. Brahma is the first created being, and he's speaking to Narada, who is his son, right at the beginning of creation, And so he's talking about being a guru. He's telling Narada, you have to be a guru. He's like the one of the most self-realized saints, and he's like a transcendental spaceman. He can travel all over the universe without any kind of mechanical arrangement. Just by his will, he can instantly appear in Vaikuntha, or that'd be pretty cool magic power, wouldn't you think? Without being, you don't even have to waste money on gas. Gas is so expensive nowadays. So, it's like, so he's talking, Brahma's speaking to his son Narada, and he said, you should speak so that there will arise devotion in men who will be born in Kali Yuga. You should utter a statement of sankalpa. Now, sankalpa is a Vedic term. Sankalpa refers to the mind's function of acceptance and determination. So it's sort of like a principle that you practice in your life. You make a vow. I'm going to always speak so that others who hear me will immediately become attracted to Krishna through devotion. And it says, starting from today, this is the sankalpa, I will describe devotion to the Lord. So this is kind of like, a principle to live your life after. It's a good principle, because you're taking help from the spiritual master, but you're not really doing anything yourself. You're just taking the words of the spiritual master and repeating them and offering them in a way that people can understand it, and so they can become attracted to Krishna consciousness and devotion to Krishna. Because anything that's related to Krishna, anything that you do that is favorable for understanding and being attracted to the message of Krishna and devotional service, that is good, and everything else is complete nonsense. You shouldn't be attached to anything. It's like whatever occupational duty the Bhagavatam describes, whatever occupational duty you do, if it doesn't lead to the attachment of hearing the messages of Vasudeva or Krishna, it's a complete total waste of time. So that's, and if so, whatever you do for others in that way, whoever you talk to, you should try to at least engage them in some kind of devotional service or some kind of way to attract them. Just, think in your mind all the time how to attract people to Krishna's qualities. He's got so many wonderful qualities. If you can always think of means, it says that the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, they're very expert in doing that. They're expert in figuring out the ways and means to inject Krishna consciousness into the dull minds of the materialists. And they are very, very expert in doing that. And so a pure devotee is always thinking about that. That's what Prabhupada was always thinking about. How can I make these people Krishna conscious? So that's a good vow. It's actually very important in a devotee's life, because that is the mission of the spiritual master. And as long as you're following in his footsteps, you do, kind of like dovetail whatever you think is what he wants and try to present it in the best way possible, then they'll be pleased and they'll empower you more and more to do more and more service. And that's what we want. So that's the difference between like a worker in the material world and a devotee. A devotee wants more work and less pay, and a worker wants less work and more pay, so because it's just the reward in and of itself. When Krishna is pleased, you are automatically, you've reached the highest pinnacle of your success in life, but and it's actually, a devotee is very, very rich. He doesn't need all this other stuff that's just going to be decimated with his death anyway. So that's the real treasure and value. So you can read the second paragraph here.
Sure.
Sorry for going on and on, but I was kind of excited about that idea of devotional service, because, it took me so long to figure out what the hell devotional service is. I don't even know who I am, what to speak of, like who Krishna is, and then so it took me like decades, and that's why I got married at a really older age. I got married when I was 45. Because I think a comedian said, that's why women like older men, because they know it takes a long time for them to get a clue. So go ahead.
As for the knowledge outlined here, the items may be analyzed as follows. Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. The material conception of life makes us very eager to receive honor from others. But from the point of view of a man in perfect knowledge, who knows that he is not this body, anything, honor or dishonor pertaining to this body is useless. One should not be hankering after this material deception. People are very anxious to be famous for their religion, and consequently, sometimes it is found that without understanding the principles of religion, one enters into some group which is not actually following religious principles, and then wants to advertise himself as a religious mentor. As for actual advancement in spiritual science, one should have a test to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items.
So what do you think are those tests to see how far you're progressing in actual religion?
Are those the enumerated?
Well, there is a test. You might join a group here. Krishna Prabhupada is saying, some people want to make a show of religion. They're just like show bottle spiritualists. They go around with wearing the dress, even of a devotee, with tilak and robes and everything, but they're making a show of it. And then they raise money, and like all these Christians, they're televangelists, and they say, well, if you give me money, then you get like 100 times into return, and that way they have their private jets and stuff. And it's all just a big scam. But what is the, it's not just wearing the dress, obviously, external things that you put on your body to show that you're religious doesn't make you religious, obviously. So what do you think that is actually the test which you can do on yourself to determine how much you're making advancement in spiritual life?
I mean, I would think it would have something to do with all of the qualities that are mentioned in the verse. Like
if you're advancing, exactly, if you're advancing in those things, and if you but one of the real tests, like I was talking to some new devotee on Facebook, and he was saying, I'm really excited about Krishna consciousness. And he was like an English teacher or something. And he said, I'm just like busting out of the seams, and he was saying, but unfortunately, I have still kind of an addiction to porn. And so I was saying, like the thing is, how you're advancing in spiritual life. The test of that is whether or not you are actually detached from all these bodily and sensual pleasures, like eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So there's so many different addictions that people have, and there's so many different societies of 12-step programs and stuff like that. And so to the extent that you're actually not attached anymore, I mean, I remember in the 70s, I'm old, so I remember that far. And I used to go to bars all the time, but then I would go to a bar after I became kind of like interested in devotional service. I'd go to a bar, but I wasn't interested in girls, and I wasn't even interested in drinking. I just ordered a 7-Up and hang out, But it's like all these things disappear, and you're not really interested anymore because you have I guess you just have a higher taste, and it's not even interesting anymore. So that's the actual test, is how far your material attachments are disappearing. Because now, go ahead.
So I have a question then. So in terms of detachment, how can, or I don't know if this is even answerable, but like, how does one become detached without being hard-hearted or cold to the world out
Oh,
there?
yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes devotees are criticized for that. Like one lady wrote to Prabhupada, he said, your disciples seem like they're condemning the material world so much. They say everything is Maya and this, and and they have kind of like, see, when you're a neophyte devotee, you're trying to guard your bhakti creeper, the thing that's in your heart that is growing up to Krishna's lotus feet gradually, and you're watering it by hearing and chanting. And that creeper is alive and growing. And so you want to guard that. You want to put a fence around it. And so sometimes you get a little bit too enthusiastic about saying, no, I'm not going to have any. I hate women. I'm not going to even like, every time I go like 50 feet within a woman, I want to kill her, But that's like, that kind of repulsion is just like the other side of attraction. Hate and love are like a very fine line. So it's actually the same thing that shows the attachment that is still there. But when you're attached to Krishna, then you're no longer attracted to these object of the senses. The senses are whatever you're addicted to. Wine, women, meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, gambling. All these things are the conditioned souls are addicted to these things, and it's a big problem. And it distracts you from your real goal, which is to actually surrender to Krishna. And Krishna has nothing to do with any of that, because we're not these bodies. So to the extent, what you're asking is like, how can you actually live in the world but not be of it without like pushing everything away, and it's just like Emerson used to say, you could just like be really stoic and just plant your foot on the ground and say, I'm not going to eat anything or see anything or taste anything or do anything that's bad for me or my family or anything else. If you did that, you'd stand still. You can't possibly completely, unless you live in a bubble, protect yourself. So you have to actually dovetail your mind and senses toward Krishna consciousness. And that way all your desires are kind of like rivers flowing into the ocean that's always being filled by the river, but it remains still. The ocean's a very big body of water. So if your main intention is to serve Krishna, then whatever minor desires are flowing into that ocean, it's not disturbing to your devotional service, because you're always your main desire is Krishna, and you you're not like uninterested in different things. Like you can still use your, like my spiritual master used to say, they have a lot of yogis and gurus, so-called swamis in India, and they say, oh, I hate money. I'm not going to take money. Money's dirty. Money's evil. It's the root of all evil. My spiritual master used to say, if you give me money, I'll take it and I'll give it to Krishna. So, it's like using everything in Krishna's service. It's as long as the art is that you can use everything. Utility is the principle in Krishna consciousness. You can use everything in Krishna's service. And as long as you do that, you don't have to like shun anything. There's two sides of the coin. There's as long as you know that everything can be used in Krishna's service. Prabhupada used to say, everything can be used in Krishna's service. You can use newspapers, you can use dictaphone machines, you can even use, he said, bombs. I don't know what you'd use that for, but like he said, you can use everything in Krishna's service. So that's true, so whatever you have that can be used, if you can figure out a way to use it in Krishna's service, you can use that. And then it becomes no longer material, it's actually spiritual, because it's used in Krishna's service, and it becomes spiritualized, just like food, you eat food. If you like to eat food, then if you offer it to Krishna first, then it becomes spiritualized, and Krishna actually tastes it and he accepts it. That's one way to, and Krishna says, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, whatever austerities you perform, do it as an offering to me. In other words, whatever you do in this world, just do it for Krishna. It's actually just a little bit of a change in consciousness from what you're already doing. Just do it for Krishna. And the problem is that we're always like, because we're in illusion most of the time, we're kind of like this pilgrim that was caught in a snowstorm, and he dies like 2 feet in front of his cabin door in the middle of the snowstorm. You know what I mean? That's the predicament of the human soul. If we would just turn and the devotee doesn't criticize the material world. He doesn't like pound, like that woman was complaining about to Prabhupada. The devotee doesn't like shun everything, but he kind of like knows that it's just a mistake in consciousness. You're just not thinking about it in the right way, and you have to apply it for Krishna instead of thinking of it's for yourself, And then when you dovetail it in that way, then you can see how everything can be used in Krishna's service. And he doesn't criticize or think, oh, these dirty karmis of these people are just like sinful and they're going to hell in a handbasket, and he doesn't like start yelling at people like that. He just kind of smiles and thinks, you're just like doing it wrong. You just do it this way. Think about Krishna, and he'll try to engage people in devotional service so that they'll have people actually want to do some service, They want to serve because that's what everybody's doing anyway. You ever heard of that song by Bob Dylan, You Got to Serve Somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah. He did that in his like when he had a girlfriend, I think was a Christian. That's a great album, the Slow Train album. But you might like to drink whiskey, you might like drink milk. You might be rich or poor, you might be blind or lame, living in another country under another name, but you still got to serve somebody. Yes, indeed. I love Dylan. But anyway, it's like you have to always serve somebody. Everybody's serving, everybody's serving their wife or their children or their shopkeeper. The shopkeepers are serving the customers, and the politicians are serving the citizens, But what is that perfect service? And using everything in Krishna's service, then you can be happy. You can live in the world, but not of it, So that's the secret. It's kind of an art that is just a slight change in mentality to know that Krishna is actually the object of instead of, Prabhupada makes his point in the beginning of Bhagavad-gītā. He says, we're not changing the message of Bhagavad-gītā, and that is this. And this is why our movement has been successful all over the world, because we are not changing the message of the Gita. And the message of the Gita is this: instead of serving your own senses, serve Krishna's senses. Krishna wants this. And Prabhupada says he demands it. Not that Krishna needs anything, but Krishna wants us to serve him because that is good for us. He's the soul of our souls. And when we serve him, we're automatically doing everything in harmony with the universe. So that is the message of Krishna consciousness. Instead of serving ourselves, serve Krishna. And we become more and more purified of all our selfish desires. And we become, and everybody starts liking us again, because we're not such control freaks. We're not trying to manipulate people for our own advantages. We're not causing wars all over the world just for our own ego, you know. And so people tend to like that kind of person. And every single living entity loves a devotee. He has no enemies. So that's a way to live in the world without, you know, any kind of conflict. Of course, the devotee always has enemies, you know, even devotees, because people don't like it when they have some kind of, they get envious. That's why they're here in the first place, is because they're envious of God and they want to be God themselves. And so if anybody's trying to serve God and they have some kind of opulence because of it, you know, like all the people that used to approach with book distribution, they said, why don't you get a job? You say, well, why should I get a job? I already have whatever I want. I've got a palace of gold in West Virginia with a marble dance floor. We dance, we sing, we have the best music, we have the best philosophy, we have the best devotees, we have the best food. Why would I want to have a job? I have everything I need. And he said, well, if you had a job, then you could put it in your name. I mean, what the hell? We already are enjoying all these things. We don't have to have it in our name. That's just a material concept. That's what I mean is a slight mistake. You think everything is yours. Nothing is yours. Everything belongs to Krishna, even including our bodies. So we just use everything and our bodies in Krishna's service. So let's go on and see if we can finish this verse. You know, I'm going on and on here. I don't know, maybe we can. Did you finish that one paragraph there?
I did. Okay.
Nonviolence is generally taken to mean not killing or destroying the body. This is really important here. This is a super important paragraph. Not killing or destroying the body, but actually nonviolence. This is the definition of nonviolence. Remember this. Nonviolence means to not put others into distress. People are trapped by ignorance into the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pangs. So, unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, one is practically practicing violence. You know, all these like vegans, you know, and they say, well, you know, you can't hurt any animals, you know, the bees, and, you know, if you even say anything bad about you know, kill a bird, two birds with one stone, then they criticize you, you know. There's like fanatics, you know, but actually, you know, you might be very nice and nonviolent to everything, but at the same time, if you're not preaching Krishna consciousness, you are violent. This is the definition of violence according to Bhagavad-gītā. One should try his best to distribute real knowledge to the people so that they will become enlightened and leave this material entanglement. Get out of this material world is the goal of life. That is nonviolence. Otherwise, you're practicing violence. You're actually being violent, even if you're like a vegan, gluten-free, you know, everybody likes to say, you know, like, I'm gluten-free. I go to the gym every day. Well, you can go to the gym every day and you don't have to advertise that you're going to the gym and gluten-free, you know. I mean, you know, why do you have to brag about it so much, you know? Anyway, go ahead and read the next paragraph. Tolerance.
Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. If one, speaking of felines.
Hey, that's a tabby, isn't it?
Yeah, it's my buddy.
We have a tabby. His name is Sydney.
That's Frohickey.
What?
Frohickey.
Oh, yeah. We had to name, my wife likes tabby cats, and she's also a hockey fan. So nice. We saw this kitten that was named Sydney. We had to have, you know, we can't absolutely not have that cat, you know.
If one is engaged in the advancement of spiritual knowledge, there will be so many insults and much dishonor from others. This is expected because material nature is so constituted. Even a boy like Prahlada, who only 5 years old was engaged in the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, was endangered when his father became antagonistic to his devotion. The father tried to kill him in so many ways, but Prahlada tolerated him. So there may be many implements to making advancements in spiritual knowledge, but we should be tolerant and continue our progress with determination.
Yeah, even though he tried to kill him, he prayed to Nrsingadev, please save my father. I mean, that's amazing. He was only 5 years old. He's so much more advanced than like all these politicians nowadays. Simplicity means that without diplomacy, one should be so straightforward that he can disclose the real truth even to an enemy. Like it says, you should treat an enemy when he comes to your house so nicely that he'll forget that he's an enemy. That's the way to deal with people. As for acceptance of spiritual master, that is essential, because without the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot progress in the spiritual science. One should approach a spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services so they'd be pleased to bestow his blessings upon the disciple. Because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna, if he bestows any blessings on his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advanced without the disciples following the regulative principles. Or the regulative principles will be easier for one who has served a spiritual master without reservation. Oh, Jesus long. This is like, forget it, Yeah, we got 3 minutes left. I don't know if we're going to be able to go over the amount of time here. There's only 2 of us. As far as I know, we have an unlimited amount of time, but it says here, it's for some reason, I've only got 3 minutes. And
yeah, last time when that clicked down to 0, I was bounced out of the meeting.
But that was with 3 people. That was with 3 people. With 2 people, I don't know why it's clicking down like this when there's only 2 people. You're supposed to be able to talk unlimitedly with just 2 people, but we'll see what happens. We'll find out when that time comes.
Okay.
So, where are we here?
Cleanliness, I believe.
Huh?
Cleanliness, the paragraph that started cleanliness. Yeah, there it is.
Okay, cleanliness.
Yeah, cleanliness is essential for making advancement in spiritual life. There are 2 kinds of cleanliness, external and internal. External cleanliness means taking a bath, but for internal cleanliness, one has to think of Krishna always and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Rama, Rama.
Hare Hare. This process cleans the accumulated dust of past karma from the mind.
Steadiness means that one should be very determined to make progress in spiritual life. Without such determination, one cannot make transcendental progress. And self-control means that one should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. There's 2 things: accept everything favorable, reject everything not favorable. And that kind of like goes together. So there's only like one thing really, do everything favorable for Krishna. One should not, one should become accustomed to this and reject anything which is against the path of spiritual progress. This is real renunciation. The senses are so strong that they're always anxious to have sense gratification. One should not cater to these demands, which are not necessary. The senses should be gratified only to keep the body fit so that one can discharge his duties of advancing in spiritual life. The most important and uncontrollable sense is the tongue. If one can control the tongue, then there's every possibility of controlling the other senses. The function of the tongue is to taste and to vibrate. Therefore, by systematic regulation, the tongue should be always engaged in tasting the remnants of foodstuff offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but the beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes. Similarly, the ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna, and the nose and smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. This is the process of devotional service, and is understood here that Bhagavad-gītā is simply expounding the science of devotional service. Devotional service is the main and sole objective. Unintelligent commentators on the Bhagavad